All right, guys, welcome to the Breakthrough Brand Podcast and welcome Davey Jones. I'm so excited to chat with you. For people who aren't familiar with you yet, can you tell a little bit about who you are, what you do, and who you serve in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I am just honored to be here. I've been really looking forward to chatting with you about lead generation. But as you know, my background is in agencies. So one of the first businesses I helped build was with my wife Krista, creatively named Davey and Krista. And that's a brand and website design business, much like you. We build on a platform called Show It. So I'm sure a lot of your listeners are already familiar with Show It and that company. And Chris and I built that business together, but I'm not a designer. So it's funny. A lot of people think I'm a designer, right? Because I do, co-own this brand and website design agency. So occasionally I'd be on a sales call with somebody and they would be like, can you give me some feedback on my brand? And I'm like, no, I can't. You're gonna have to talk to Krista about that. But my job at Davey and Krista primarily revolved around marketing and sales. And as we were building that business together, we'd build websites for people. And typically the next question that people would ask would be like, hey, so, you built this website for me. How do I get traffic at this website? Or how do I start using this website to generate leads? And since that was my primary role at Davey and Krista, most of those questions would be directed toward me. And so I started coaching some people and I started taking on some clients and doing Facebook ads because that was another one of my roles over at Davey and Krista was running our Instagram and Facebook ads. And I really enjoyed that. It was an opportunity to actually work with clients, right? Whereas Krista and our design team, typically are the ones that are working one-on-one with clients. So there's an opportunity for me to serve people. So as we got started with that, I was really enjoying that. But then I had a conversation at a conference with two of my good friends. And they were, they had a similar background in lead gen and Facebook ads. And we were talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we did this together? So we started Till Agency, which is a paid advertising agency. And we'd run Facebook and Instagram ads for people. And that was a really great experience and taught me a lot about building a business, helping others build their business, driving traffic to a website, lead generation. And we manage millions of dollars in ad spend for probably a lot of companies that your community is familiar with, like Flowdesk, Dubsado, CloudSpot, Show It, and a lot of course creators as well. And I also, my friends that I ran that with, they're two very intelligent people, so got to learn a lot from them as well. So started doing that, ran that for about 5 years, and here I am running BDOW now. Excited to chat a little bit more about that. But BDOW is a form and pop-up tool, formerly known as Sumo. Some people might know it as SumoMe. But basically, we help people build their email list.
Yeah. You just do so much too. I also just thought about this, but like, didn't you and Krista used to do or still selling meat, right? That you're farming and stuff like that. Are y'all still doing that? That's so random a
Yeah,
question, but okay.
yeah. So when we moved out to Lexington, we started homesteading a little bit.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who works or he runs a wedding venue. And by runs a wedding venue, he owns a wedding venue down here. But he's also had some farm experience as well. And so he was kicking his farm back up and he was like, hey, do you want to do this together? Not sure why he asked me because I have no farming experience. But started, yes, we were running a farm together for a time and selling meat in kind of like a butcher box style, a subscription meat to your door kind of service. But no, yeah, I'm out of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I've admired always how like multi-passionate you are and how just you have your hands in so many different types of businesses and different things, even though they all can overlap to an extent. It's just really cool.
Yeah.
So with BDOW, formerly Sumo, I still remember because you and I have been to so many like Show It related events together, but last August we were there being pretend Shark Tank judges for
Yes.
Show It's event, which was so
Yes.
much fun. But I remember being at dinner with you and Krista and Todd and Elisa, and then you and Todd talking about how like y'all were thinking about buying a company and thinking about names. And back then, the names were a lot different than what you ultimately have gone with. But just could you take listeners back to like what it was like, y'all even figuring out that you're interested in going into business together and purchasing Sumo and how that like came up to begin with?
Yeah, so I've known Todd for a while now. We met each other probably, I don't know, a decade ago or so.
Yeah.
We did a leadership program together out in Santa Barbara over the course of a year, and got to know him through the Show It community as well. I mean, Krista being a Show It designer, and he's a guy who's become a good friend, and also just has always been sort of a mentor. Like if I needed business advice or I was feeling down about something, like I'd give him a call. And so just a super wise guy all around, and I just think low key, like one of the best business minded people out there. So I've known him for a while. A few years ago, he reached out and he was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about acquiring this company. I'd love to partner with you on it and have you run it." And at the time, I'm running Davey and Krista. I'm running the farm still. I'm running Till Agency. Just a lot going on. Wasn't quite sure that this is what I wanted to do, so I took some time to think about it. And then when I got back to him, that opportunity pretty much sailed. So I was like, hey, if something does come up again, I'd love the opportunity to work with you, and sort of held it loosely, never really followed up about it. Like, I just figured, who knows if something like that were to ever come up again. Right. But he eventually reached back out and he was like, hey, this opportunity came across my desk. And at that point I was like, no, I know I want to do this with you. So told him yes. It was funny. The opportunity that we're talking about was Sumo. I used to have a Sumo account, probably back in like 2017, went and logged back into my account. Sure enough, all the emails that I collected and stuff were still there. So that was exciting, like immediately recognizing the company too, and having some familiarity already with that company. And yeah, I mean, the process, I'm happy to answer like any specific questions you have about it, because it's a wild process. It feels a lot like buying a home, but just more fragile. Like the deal's more fragile. It feels like there's more things that can fall through. There's a lot of moving parts. So the whole process started about this time last year. So late 2023. And then it took, almost 6 months for the deal to close. There's this whole due diligence phase, which is kind of like a really intense home inspection, that lasts over many months, making sure things work and, everything that they say is true, them getting a feel for us and whether we'd be a good fit for, taking over the product and all of that. But yeah, happy to answer any specific questions you have about it.
Yeah, I'm curious with like acquiring this part of the larger company, did you have any team that came with that, like from their team, or was it like you're just acquiring this particular product?
Yeah, no, we were just acquiring the particular product. So we didn't have any team members come over. It was just the app itself. For those who are familiar with Sumo or Sumo Me, it's part of a larger company called the Sumo Group. So the Sumo Group owns Sumo, and they own AppSumo, and they own King Sumo, and a bunch of other tools. AppSumo is really where their focus has been the last few years, because it's turned into like, nearly $100 million company, I think. Which is one of the reasons why they wanted to divest out of Sumo. So that was also one of the reasons why we knew we'd have to rebrand as well. One awesome thing that happened along the way, though, is that we got connected with a developer who helped build the original Sumo app. And he had come on as our CTO. Colin, he was an answer to prayer. And so it was really great. It's been really great having him, because he has a lot of familiarity with the product. And I think he's helped us get much further along quicker than we would have been able to otherwise.
Yeah, that's really cool having someone come on who is so familiar. And I think a lot of listeners probably are familiar with Sumo products. I know I'm like you. I think I had an account for this earlier in business and had stopped using it maybe with alongside Show It at the time or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious too if you want to tell. I already know the name story because you and I've had a call talking about this, but I think
Yeah.
the name story is interesting if you want to share that.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's interesting when it comes to rebranding a business. I think when the typical wisdom when you're acquiring a business is not to rebrand it. Maybe you rebrand it, but you don't change the name. And the reason being, of course, is because one of the advantages of buying a business is that you're already starting with something. And typically it's going to have some sort of name familiarity already. However, because of the Sumo Group still existing and still owning AppSumo and King Sumo and all these other Sumo tools, we knew that we'd have to change the name just to avoid confusion. So we started brainstorming names early in the process. I don't know if you remember any of the early names, but they
I
were
feel like
all over the place,
there's a
right?
lot of form. Form was
Yeah.
used a lot, right? Am I remember that? And y'all were using convert some as well.
Yeah, convert and form and just
Yeah.
different variations of that. Then there were some that were just kind of wild and out there as well. And that was a fun process going through that. My
Yeah.
typically I'm a more straightforward person. And I think that's like kind of the SEO, expert in me is like, I just want to be, I want my name to also convey what it is that we do. Um, but Todd's more of the opinion that like, hey, listen, if you think about a lot of the most popular companies out there, they have a name that they sort of added meaning to. It didn't
Mhm.
really mean much before, or it didn't mean anything at all, and now it means something because of this, because of their name. So, he started kicking around a couple different ideas, and eventually we landed tentatively on a name. It was going to be Form Burst. All right, so that was one of the like, early like we just had to choose something to move on. And in the same conversation, Todd's like, "Hey, listen, I found BDOW on a domain auction site," and I was like, "Cool." But like we've already made this decision, right? So we need to move on. And again, if you know Todd, this whole you can picture this conversation. So I was like, yeah, cool. Well, if you want to bid on it, I guess that's fine. I mean, if you could pick it up for cheap. And so sure enough, like bidding war later, Todd has secured the domain BDOW, BADOW.com. And he's like, I think this is it. And I'm like, I don't, I don't think this is it. So we're going to a show at DXP, which is a designer's retreat for Show Its design partners, which me and you will be on later this year. Really looking forward to that. So we're going on this designer's retreat. Jen Olmstead, mutual friend of ours from Tonic, right, is going to be on this retreat as well. And I was like, Jen, listen, I'm starting to form a coalition. Like we can't go with BDOW. Like this can't happen. So sure enough, I'm going in and I'm already kind of like seeding people like, hey, listen, this is not the name. But by the end of the trip, like it was all anybody was saying, and someone would do something cool and it'd be like, BDOW, and it became this whole thing. And by the end of it, I'd warmed up to it, but I still thought, no, this isn't it. But the interesting thing about that name is that anytime I shared it with people, people thought it was silly, but then they also love saying it, and I think it grew on people and it was memorable, and people, even that I would share it with, that, don't even understand kind of what I'm doing, for a living. They'd ask about, oh, how's BDOW going? And it's not really like as much interest in the actual business itself as it is like, oh, this is a cool name and it had a fun story and whatnot. And so eventually we decided this was going to be it. We made some changes along the way. We went from BADOW, which, I think one of the designers pointed out has both bad and ow in it, right?
Yeah.
To BDOW. It's also shorter. We picked up, all the variations in spelling, BIDOW, BADOW, and so on, and redirected those to BDOW. And then we ran a few tests as well, like could people spell it? And, sure enough, most people spell it and most people pronounce it the right way, but, everybody's an expert when you start naming a company, everybody has an opinion. And so that was really interesting as well.
Yeah, it's so true of so many things in business. If you ask too many people, all of a sudden nothing makes sense that you thought made sense, and everyone has completely different thoughts. And I love how for BDOW on the website, you guys make it really easy to figure out how to say it. If someone were landing on there like, wait, I don't know how to do this, you have like the how it's pronounced and all of that, which is helpful.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me of Dubsato's name,
Mm.
which is another like notable company in our industry. And that one I would argue is harder to say and spell than BDOW is even, but it's like you love it. It's so unique.
Yeah.
And it's fun to say and spell once you figure it out and all that. So I love that.
And after a while, it's just not a thing, right? And so
Yeah.
many people were like, oh, this isn't, you're going to really shoot yourself in the foot because people aren't going to be able to pronounce this. And that hasn't been the case. But then there's also, once you start looking, you realize there's so many companies out there that are popular that like Klaviyo, for instance, is it Klaviyo or Klaviyo? Gusto, Gusto. I mean, the list goes on. But yeah, it's I think a few things that we really wanted to get at is we wanted to be memorable. We thought like, okay, so we're coming from sumo. So it's not as if the tool is called like Lead Capture Pro and then we changed it to something more obscure, right?
Yeah.
We went from sort of a silly name to another silly name.
Yeah.
And so I thought there was some, some opportunity in that as well. 4-letter domains are hard to come by. So we were able to pick this 4-letter domain up for
Yeah.
relatively cheap, especially in relative to sumo.com. Sumo.com, that domain cost the Sumo Group 1.5 million or something like that when they bought it. So yeah,
That's crazy. How
feel
long
like
ago
they're
did
well
they
done.
buy that domain? Do you know?
I want to say if you Googled it, it would come up, but it would,
Yeah.
it's going to be somewhere like 2018, maybe
Okay.
2019.
I
It was
find
a while
domain
back.
buying so interesting. And I had an episode recently in this podcast about ConvertKit changing to the 3-letter kit. It's like
Yes.
that's like such a huge undertaking, and Kit's like the complete opposite direction that you guys are going. Of like this is very different and niche versus like a more word we all hear.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. So let's talk about BDOW though, and like what it is. For listeners, most people listening who are building email lists, which I know you're a big fan of, like how we should work on building email lists, which I'm all about and talk about that a lot in this show. But like, we're using things like Flowdesk, ConvertKit, or even something like Kajabi for our email list. So could you explain to people how BDOW is different from those?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of email marketing platforms, right? They're focused on the email aspect of things. So really their focus is how you communicate with your subscribers. Our focus is giving people the tools to build their email list faster. So we're really focused on getting people on your email list versus, the communication aspect, communicating with your list. So that is one way in which BDOW is a bit different than other tools out there. Beyond that, we offer a lot of advanced functionality as well. So, our form and pop-up tools, you can set targeting rules that get really granular. And there are so many different options. So you can target people based on what website they're coming from. So for instance, after this episode airs, right? And so you have a code that people can use for BDOW. I think it's Elizabeth, right? And it's going to save people 20% on BDOW. Well, let's say somebody clicks on that link in the show notes and they come to the BDOW website. We could show them a pop-up that maybe has your face on it and is like, hey, use Elizabeth's link right now to sign up and save 20% and start drawing that connection between our two companies. But the list goes on. Sometimes you want to run maybe just a Facebook or Instagram specific campaign. So you want to show people a pop-up just for, that set of visitors. That can be helpful. Maybe you're running a Facebook ad campaign and you're running it to cold traffic. So people who have never heard of you before. You don't want to display a discount code all across your website, but you want to remind them, on this Facebook ad they just clicked on, and you want to remind them of that discount code. So again, you could use that functionality to show them a specific pop-up. Beyond that, you could target people based on the number of times they've been to your site. So maybe somebody's new and you want to put up a pop-up that has a couple different links to maybe your greatest hits or something similar. You could target people based on what page they're on. And then you can mix and match all of these targeting options to get, again, even more granular, just to make sure that you're showing the right pop-up to the right person.
Yeah.
So those are some of the ways that BDOW is different than, what else is out there. I would say that also, we offer functionality like A/B testing as well. So you can create variations of your form. I think our A/B testing system is like one of the most slick A/B testing systems out there. Really just takes, one click of a button, and then it's easy to track what variation is winning and picking a winner. We have multiple integrations. So I think we have dozens of integrations with other email service providers. But oftentimes, like when you collect a lead, you might want to do more with that lead than just send it to your email marketing list. So you could set up multiple integrations to send that lead to different places, wherever you may want to send it. And then we also have Zapier integration. So you really can do whatever you want with that data. And then there's other advanced functionality as well. You can create, you can use hidden fields. Be happy to chat a little bit more about hidden fields, but hidden fields are awesome because you can collect information about your subscribers that your subscribers can't see. So for instance, like let's say you have a pop-up that appears across your whole website, but you want to know on what page does that pop up most convert.
Gosh.
You could use a hidden field that would grab the URL of the page a pop-up is filled out on, and then you could run a report and say, okay, this is the page that this pop-up is mostly completed on.
Wow.
And that's, again, sort of just the tip of the iceberg, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to hidden fields. We can talk about discount code campaigns, which are one of my favorites as well. And there's a lot of hidden field functionality that you could take advantage of there. But yeah, so lots of different mechanisms, lots of different levers that you can pull to get more people on your list.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, there really are. I've been playing with BDOW. I've had it on my current website a little bit, but then I've been mainly, by the time this airs, my new website will be live, which I'm like, woohoo, but I'll be using it on the new website.
Yeah.
And it is like, as I've been exploring it, and making forms and all that, and the pop-ups and all that, I'm just like, it's a lot, like all the different things you can do. It really is like, where do you start? How do you know what to do right for your business at the time? I do think, obviously, like you said, it could be popping up with something like a lead magnet, discount codes, and things like that. I'm curious, and that you might not even know how to answer this, but like if someone were using BDOW for the first time, and let's say they're a course creator or selling something like templates, like what would you say would be a good thing for them to start with first in terms of
Yeah.
like what they're using it for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, in general, we're big believers in lead gen. I think that businesses that are growing and consistently, making sales or booking clients are always doing some sort of lead gen. So
Yeah.
we always encourage people to have something on their website, some sort of freebie that people are going to get in exchange for their email address. So that's a good place to start, just standard. Having a pop-up, that appears that sends people to a landing page where they can complete a form and get that freebie. I think that's like a good standard place to start. You always want to be building your email list, and you can always market to those people down the road. If you're selling something like templates or a course, you could always offer new visitors, a one-time discount code that they could use. This is one of the easiest things to set up, especially if you use WooCommerce or Shopify. So you can integrate with WooCommerce or Shopify using BDOW. For instance, we use WooCommerce. And when you connect that integration, you can create a discount campaign. When you create the discount campaign, you set up your discount. So whatever you want it to be, whether it's, $20 off or 20% off or, whatnot, you set up the code. And anytime somebody completes that pop-up, they will be generated a code that's unique to them.
That's
all right.
So cool.
And what you can do, again, with that hidden field functionality, and we have tutorials on all of these things. So I'll make sure I send those to you and you can include them in the show notes. You can use a hidden field to send not only the subscriber information to your email marketing platform, but the discount code as well. So then when you follow up with people, you can say, hey, Elizabeth, thanks for expressing interest in, whatever product it is. Remember, you have 48 hours to use this code, and then you can dynamically insert the code in the email. And those are, I think, one of the most effective campaigns. It's Krista's favorite part of, BDOW because it's so simple to set up and then it's so effective. So those would be good places to start if you're, if you want a little bit more guidance.
Yeah, I love that. And that's really cool, the WooCommerce and Shopify integration of like it being that unique code. And I know for me, when I shop for, more lifestyle, less business to business products, but like I get that all the time where then they follow up with you and it's like, yes, like I was going to forget about this and not use it. Had this like the follow up, not come in, and the unique coupon code and you encouraging me as a new visitor to use this. So effective.
Yeah. There's a reason why why pretty much every e-commerce shop has some sort of campaign like this set up on their website.
Yeah. Yeah. And for people listening too, I mean, something just I think we should kind of note is like within Show It, like without BDOW, a lot of this stuff is not possible. You could kind of makeshift some of it, but it's like this is like you can't do X intent pop-ups that same way. You can do like where something pops up at a certain percentage on the page and things like that. But this makes it all feel a lot like you're getting the data, and like less complex, I would say, as someone who's been using Show It a long time.
Yeah, and with Show It, of course, we all love Show It.
Yeah.
Definitely our recommended website platform.
Yeah.
But there's additional controls as well. I mean, like people get annoyed with pop-ups because it seems like something that's often interrupts us. But really, a pop-up should meet a visitor where they're at, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, with a lot of just website platforms like Show It, you can set it to trigger on a certain scroll depth. So somebody scrolls 50% of the page and the pop-up appears. But what happens is if they scroll up the page and then back down the page, it appears again, even if they opted out, right? In BDOW, there's more granular settings so that if you don't want to show a pop-up again to somebody who has opted out of that pop-up, like they've clicked the X, then you can set it not to appear, or you can set it not to appear for 2 days, so that there's some space between that. One of my favorite features lately of BDOW is our show a tab feature. And so the way this works is you can create a pop-up that when somebody clicks out of it, it minimizes to the bottom of the screen.
Oh.
So there's a little bar that shows up at the bottom of the screen. It will have some sort of title. So let's say it's a discount campaign, save 15% or whatnot. If they click it or if they click out of it, it goes to the bottom and it will just save 15%. And so if people want to return to it, all they have to do is click it and it pops back up. So it's a way to have like the power of a pop-up, getting a message in front of somebody, but at the same time, not being as obtrusive.
Yeah. I love that too, because sometimes, like, I think about something like a discount code coming up for a first time visitor. Like, they might feel like, hey, I really need to look at your templates. I really need to look
Yeah.
at this course before I actually know if I want to do it. And then you can feel like, wait, I don't want to click it off because then I'm going to lose
Yep.
that deal, especially if that actually is only showing on a first time visit. That's so cool then for it to just be minimized. I feel like I was actually I was telling you this before we started recording, but trying to book plane flights for our trips. And Southwest has a special deal for me that I had that issue with where I was like, if I click it off, I'm going to lose it. And I screenshot it on my phone. It's like that would really kind
Yeah.
of prevent that issue. That's so cool. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about though for forms and lead magnets and pop-ups as well. But like, how do we know? I know you have some like benchmark statistics for us, but like when we think about like, okay, we have a lead magnet, we have a form. Is it even converting well? Like what is good percentage wise on conversions?
Yeah. That's a great question. And one we get commonly. I think one of the things that I would encourage people to do is just get something launched. Benchmarks are really helpful just to understand, okay, is this performing well or not? But at the end of the day, once you get something launched, you have your own benchmark, right? And then every time you launch something new, you can use, that previous form or pop-up as a benchmark and try to improve that a little bit each time. So we offer a lot of different form and pop-up types. And we don't have data that says, oh, this is the best performing type of pop-up, because it's really a lot about finding the right tool for the job. So for instance, like just at face value, we have what's called a click trigger pop-up, and those appear really high converting because how these work is, you might be reading a blog post and it's like, download my free chat GPT prompts here. And you click on that link and it opens a pop-up, right? Well, if somebody clicks on that link, they've already demonstrated interest in that. So of course they're going to complete the form, right? So click trigger pop-ups are great, again, because they're not obtrusive, but as somebody reads a blog article, they'll show up. But anyway, there are some benchmarks that are helpful. So for instance, if you created a landing page or a squeeze page and you're promoting some sort of freebie on that page, typically what we like to see are conversion rates between 30 and 50%. The easier it is to consume that freebie, the higher the conversion rate should be, right? So, if it's an ebook, we want to see conversion rates probably closer to 50%. If it's a webinar, it's not, it's not uncommon to see conversion rates of maybe a little bit closer to 30%. Why? Because when you sign up for a webinar, you're committing, potentially an hour of your time, at some point to actually consume that freebie. So even though both are free, you can see how one requires a little bit more of you than the other, right? So I'd say between 30 and 50% there. As far as pop-ups go, it depends on what you're doing. If you have the same pop-up appear across every page of your website, then it's not going to be uncommon for you to see conversion rates maybe in the low, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% area. And that's just because like as somebody's visiting your website, they may or may not be reading or consuming content that's about that lead magnet, right?
Yeah.
The more dialed in you get with your pop-up. So if somebody's reading a blog post about fonts, if you also show them a pop-up that's like download my free guide to
Mm.
fonts or download my font pairing guide, that's highly relevant to what somebody's reading about. So you're going to typically want to see conversion rates that are a little bit higher with that. So hopefully that makes sense, at least as a starting point.
Yeah, that does. And with that example you just gave of like a freebie about fonts on blog post about fonts, would people be putting like just to think about how we like would practically do this? So like in BDOW, we're making this form, right? How would we make it end up going on to these different blog posts? Like say there's multiple blog posts where you talk about something where that freebie would be relevant. How are you like connecting the two?
Yeah, so this is one of the neat things about BDOW as well, is that it's really easy to target multiple pages. So if your links, when you write a blog, if your blog posts follow some sort of naming convention, so maybe for instance, every time you write about brand design in the URL, you're going to mention brand design. So it might be like brand design, then a mood board or something like that. You can target slugs, or you can target URLs with that contain specific words, and then that way you're targeting more than one blog post at a time, and you don't have to go and grab every single link, every single specific link that you want to target. You can
Yeah.
do the same thing with categories as well. So let's say you have a brand specific download for brand design and all the content that you create along the lines of brand design. You could target that category with a specific pop-up. And again, that way you don't have to go grab every single URL and paste them into BDOW. You just set up that one rule, and then that pop-up will show up on all those pages.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, especially when you think about people like me and you who both make a lot of content. I'm like, I could really use that on my blog for getting really specific on like, hey, this freebie relates to these blog posts. Let's do a pop up with it. I love that.
Yep.
And then that can grow with your business too, of it not being the individual ones, but like when there's new content that falls under those parameters, it's just getting included.
Yeah. And I would recommend people like, don't get try not to get in the weeds when it comes to setting up the display rules. One of the easiest things to do, I think some of the lowest hanging fruit, something that'll get you a quick win, is go into Google Analytics or wherever you keep analytics and look at your most read blog posts, right? And then say, okay, I'm going to take these top 10 blog posts and I'm going to make sure there's a pop-up that appears on those pages that's maybe relevant to that post, or mostly relevant to what it is that I do.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to think like, oh, for every blog post, you have to have a different lead magnet. I'm a big
Yeah.
believer that really you only need one lead magnet to be successful, right? Like
Yeah.
that's all you need. But figure out what your most read pages are, put pop-ups and forms on those pages. And those are the pages that you're most likely going to see higher conversions on anyway, because they're the pages that are getting traffic.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, with that, if you just said that you feel like a misconception is that people think we need a million lead magnets, which, I'm someone who has so many lead magnets. It's not even because I think that's the way it needs to be done. It's just like at some point, content wise, you acquire a lot of
Mhm.
lead magnets. But what are some like mistakes you would say you see business owners making in regards to lead generation and growing their email list?
Yeah, so that's one of them. I think creating something new. Mistake number one: creating something new rather than using something that you already know works.
Mm.
This is a big one. I think when we think of a lead magnet, we're like, okay, I'm going to go and make this new content, and any new content you create is unproven content, right?
Yeah.
Like until you actually publish it, you don't know how it's going to be received. So a wiser way to go about this is to say, okay, what tools do I use in my business that I could templatize? Right. One of my favorite lead magnets that we created was an SEO lead magnet, and it was based on an SEO brief that we've used in all of my businesses. So when we create content, we use this SEO brief, and so this is nothing new. All I had to do was copy this Google document over and then make it public for people, and then boom, lead magnet. It maybe took 15 minutes to create. I already know it works because it gets me and my team quick wins, right? And there's so many different, probably, especially in a design business, there are probably so many different aspects of your process that you could templatize for people and get them quick wins.
Yeah.
Um, Another one would be not solving specific problems for specific people. This requires you to know your ideal customer. If you don't know them, then you're going to demonstrate that by offering really broad solutions to broad problems. And those aren't appealing to people, right? People get quick wins by having specific problems solved for them. I was just thinking about, different things that I've bought recently. And this is totally random, but we have an orchard that we planted in our yard here. And one of the issues is that when the yard's cut, if we get too close with the weed whacker, right, it hurts the trunks. Anyway, when I'm searching for solutions, right, there's a million solutions out there that will protect tree trunks. The one that spoke to me, right, was the one that was like, this protects, your tree trunks from weed eaters, and it's like, oh, right. Very specific. But I think we have a fear of getting too specific as if we're going to turn too many people away. Right.
Yeah.
But you want to focus on the people you can deliver a quick win. All right. And that requires getting specific.
Yeah.
Thinking that this is kind of a extension of that. But I'd say mistake number 3 is thinking that providing a lot of information is the same as providing a quick win.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got started, my first ebook that I ever created, I think was like 50 plus pages. And it's like, well, because I want it to be valuable, but it's like, who has time to read this ebook? I would have been better off like cutting that down to a single page and just focusing on maybe an aspect of the issue that I was trying to solve and getting people a win there. I think, it's same thing with courses. I don't know, you've created a number of courses now. And I think there is sometimes this pressure like, I need to record more, but people don't want more. They want answers to their question. And if that takes 2 lessons, then why turn it into 5 lessons?
Yeah. And I found with courses, it's even like, it is, from a marketing perspective, actually like a negative marketing thing if the course is crazy long. Like that's actually not like your most, like that's not what you need to lead with. You need to lead with like what it's going to get people, not the length. Because people don't just want more stuff to watch. It's like, hey, what will result if it is a longer course? Does the length get me? But too often new course creators do get stuck on like, it is this many hours of content. And that's how you're like trying to sell it. And it's like, that's not what's going to sell this.
Yeah. When people buy stuff, they're trying to solve a problem, and it should be all about how quickly you can help them solve that problem. Fourth mistake, not sharing about things. I think this is one of the most common things that I see. People will create a lead magnet, they'll have a mailing list, they'll wonder why people aren't signing up. But it's like, when was the last time you shared about this? Well, on stories like last year. And it's like, okay, well, this needs to be something that you share about quite literally every day. Your business solves a specific problem for people. And so, whatever problem you're solving for people should be at the center of your lead magnet. And so there should always be an excuse to talk about it. If you're some sort of wellness coach and you're helping people solve joint pain, you might have a lead magnet of like, hey, here are 25 foods you have to cut out that cause inflammation, right? Well, anytime you're talking about inflammation, that's an opportunity to say, and I have this free guide here, that doesn't get as annoying as people think it does, like especially when I'm going to like a new Instagram account for information, like I want to hear about that stuff. And it would be a problem if everybody was like, well, I shared about this yesterday, so I can't share about it for 30 more days,
Exactly.
Audience is always turning over. So we shouldn't be concerned about, quote unquote, oversharing.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, overcomplicating things. I'd love to hear about your experience with this as well. But I think one of the things that I thought early on, especially around like course creation, selling digital products, is that I had to have really complicated funnels, like my marketing had to have all the automations, and I had to have 10 different sequences. And that, if someone clicked on this link, they were going to go over to this sequence or, whatever it might be. But the reality is simple sells. And, I think that whenever you can keep things simple, keep things simple. You don't need a lead magnet to start building an email list. One email list that I'm a part of, and it's one that I read every week. the guy who writes it, he'll just be like, hey, tomorrow I'm publishing an email on XYZ, 10 lessons I learned from whatever.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the ways he drives growth to his email list. And it's kind of like having a different email or lead magnet each time, right? He's promising free information for a subscription, but it didn't require him to create anything other than the email that he's going to send. And that's a great way, I think, just to get started. So this was made really apparent to me recently. I was at Craft and Commerce, actually, and they did this mastermind in advance of it. And Bonnie Christine was there, and she shared. And one of the things that I felt really convicted about afterwards was like, she's killing it, and she has very simple processes, and the more that I grow, I feel like the more I realize that, typically the people who are earning a lot, they haven't overcomplicated things. They've actually just focused on the fundamentals and focused on doing them well.
Yeah. And that's so powerful right there. Cause it is like, especially when we are consuming so much business podcasts, business courses, and all the things, it can feel like the answer is always one more lead magnet, one more funnel, this interesting thing like a private podcast, or like you need to do a quiz, you need to do all these different things. And that is the answer. But yeah, like you're right. I would agree with you that you don't always need a lead magnet to get people on your list. And I feel like I know who you were talking about when you gave that example of someone, like I've seen that as well, of like people. Jesse Itzler's one person I think of. I don't know if that's who you were talking about or not, but like he's someone who on Instagram, he'll just be like, I'm sending this email, sign up. And it's like, yeah, the content is what's interesting, and he's not having to repurpose anything. Yeah, I love that. One thing too, it makes me think about that, like longtime listeners to this podcast will have heard me share before, but when I was early in my business, I made a lead magnet that had nothing to do with what I sold. That was back when I was just doing branding, website design. It was like a Google Doc blogging template. And I was like, I similar to what you said about your SEO tool, I was like, I use this in my business. I'm going to make it into a lead magnet. And it got really great SEO on that blog post it was in. And I got over 700 opt-ins for it. They were all college students with college domain, email addresses that were completely irrelevant to anything I sold, mainly bouncing emails. And I eventually had to like make it not an opt-in. I left it up because it was like doing so well on Google, but I was like, I cannot keep getting all these people on my email list. They're so irrelevant. But that's what can happen if your lead magnet like truly has nothing to do with what you're selling. Is you're going to get people, maybe it'll go viral on SEO for SEO perspective, and you get 700 people in like a month. But it's like, that was like, those were all people who were never going to buy from me. And so it's like, yeah, you got to make sure it's the right people signing up.
Oh yeah. And that's a really good call out. I think along those lines, like a similar mistake that I see people make is thinking that they're going to share too much in their lead magnet.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
can't do it. It's impossible. I challenge somebody to share too much in a lead magnet, where then it leads to people, like the vast majority of people not purchasing or whatnot. I mean, of course, everybody who downloads your lead magnet, even if they are qualified, doesn't mean that they're going to purchase. But I guarantee you're going to build more trust when you lay out exactly how you're going to solve somebody's problem. And we saw this with especially the ad agency. Like when we did discovery calls with people, we weren't like holding back some secret, formula that, oh, if you sign a contract with us, we're going to use this super secret formula. We're not going to tell you what it is, but it's going to get you results. No, we'd show up to a meeting, a discovery call, and we'd say, hey, this is what we think you should do. And we'd lay it out. And that helps build trust with people. Like I want to know when I'm working with somebody how they plan on solving the issue. And sure, there's going to be a small percentage of people who are going to be like, oh yeah, I'll just go do it on my own. But most people are going to be like, hey, you're obviously the expert. I don't want to waste my time with this. You just do it,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but you definitely want to make sure that it is relevant to what it is that you do. We've run into similar stuff with blog posts, how to add your Snapchat story to your Instagram story. You remember when Instagram rolled out story? Yeah. Drove so much traffic to our website that was mostly not helpful for us. So,
yeah. Which that so can happen. That's funny. Yeah. I feel like lots of people have those kind of stories if you've been around a little bit. So those are great mistakes to think about. And if we feel like our email list isn't growing though, like maybe someone listening, they're like, I have a lead magnet, I have it on my website. Maybe they're not talking about it enough, which would be a good like troubleshooting point, like you already said. But what would you suggest they look first if the email list isn't growing, but they do have like a way for people to sign up that's on their website?
Yeah, great question. So I'd always start whenever I'm troubleshooting anything, I want to start with the simple solutions and then move to the more complicated, time consuming solutions. So simple would be first, just making sure that everything's working. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised that sometimes you get into it and you're like filling out the form and you're like, oh, this form isn't actually connected to anything, or,
Yeah.
whatever the issue is. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. After that, though, I'm going to start double checking that everything makes sense, right? I'm going to look at the copy on the landing page, and I'm going to say, okay, is it benefit focused copy? Is it copy that's easily skimmable? Do I have a big headline? Have I come up with a few bullet points? After reading this again and maybe getting somebody else to read it, is it clear what somebody is going to get out of this lead magnet? All right. So I'm just going to revisit the copy on either the form or pop-up or on the landing page that I'm on. I'm going to look at where I'm sharing this. Is this on high traffic pages of my website? Like if it's just on a landing page somewhere and it's not easy, it takes a couple of clicks to get there. That could be the problem as well. This is something that people should be able to find maybe in your Instagram link in bio on your most highly visited sites. I would say, on the homepage of your site, we always have some sort of opt-in available on the homepage of our website. And it's typically going to be whatever we feel like is our best opt-in that we get the best ROI on. And again, that goes back to, are you sharing about it consistently? From there, I'll look at the lead magnet. But here's the first thing I'm going to do with the lead magnet, especially if I feel like it's a good lead magnet, is I'm going to play around with the title of the lead magnet, because sometimes it's just changing the title and that makes all the difference. We have Canva, free Canva social graphics on the Davey and Krista website. And when we first launched them, we have a couple different sets now, but the first set we launched were like website launch graphics. Like if you wanted graphics to announce your website launch, these were for you. We were running Facebook ads. Each download cost us a couple dollars, and we were like, oh, this is not going well. So we changed them, and instead of website launch graphics, we just made them free social share graphics. That was, we just changed the title, and then all of a sudden we were getting leads for under $1. And so just changing the title vastly improved how the download performed. And I didn't have to go back. Like no one had to create new templates. We didn't have to create a new lead magnet, because all of that kind of stuff takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, and this is why I think you should start with things that have been proven out to a certain extent. We have a new rule on our team where, we're not about really around how much time we're willing to spend on new lead magnets. I just came up with Chat GPT prompts that goes along with one of our more popular blog posts. And these Chat GPT prompts are in a Google Doc. They're not designed,
Yeah.
If they end up doing really well, then maybe we'll, get them designed so it looks a little bit more like an ebook. But those are the things that I'm first looking at before I ever get to redesigning or creating new lead magnets.
Yeah, well, I like that too, what you said about the Google Doc of like keeping it simple on the back end. It can even be just, I think sometimes just standing out and doing something different can be huge. Of like people are often used to getting a freebie in a PDF format. And it's like you can even stand out a little bit with it being like a Google Doc they're getting instead.
Yeah, it's easier to use too. Like when
Yeah,
you think about it, like especially ChatGPT prompts, I want something that's easy copy and paste. It's not always easy copying and pasting out of a PDF,
that's true.
And so at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, like, is this going to make a big difference in the number of people downloading the lead magnet? No. One, because people don't actually see the product until they download it anyways, or until they get access to it anyway.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we would think through, both in creating a lead magnet, but then also troubleshooting something that's wrong.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so as we kind of close out, I want to know with BDOW, you've already given some throughout, but you and I were talking about this beforehand, like how there's so many ways we can use it on our website. I was wondering if you could share a few ways that are not necessarily growing email list, but other like alternative ways. I know like in website messages is one of them, but you could kind of explain like ways we can use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the possibilities really are endless, especially with pop-ups. I mean, it's just one of the best ways to start a conversation. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is just having as many conversations as possible with people. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're in the beginning stages of starting a business, there is no replacing going out and having conversations with people.
Yeah.
No one is going to be talking about your business in the beginning if you're not willing to talk about your business. Whether you're starting a podcast, you're starting a design business, whatever it is that you're doing. And so in building BDOW, the minute I took over, one of the first things that I started doing, and because I reached out to you as well, is reach out to everybody I know and tell them about this tool and how it might work for their business. Not in a pushy way, but like, hey, this is what I'm doing now, and this is what this tool can offer you. And I think that that's really the basis of like lead gen, right? Because at some point, somebody or hopefully somebody starts having that conversation without you. So they're like, hey, I'm trying to build this design business, and somebody's like, oh, have you heard about Elizabeth McCravy's podcast? Like that's where you want to get to, where
Yeah.
people are having conversations for you. But anyway, back to your original question about how you can use BDOW on your website. Not only can you use it for email opt-ins, you can also use it to promote the different things that you have going on. So one of those things might be promoting a sale. I think the more popular ways that you see this done is using like sticky bars across your website. So it's a
Yeah.
long horizontal bar that sits at the top or bottom of your website, and it might say something like, save 25% for however long or whatever sales going on. It might have a countdown timer in it, right? That might be one way that you use it. You can use it for other in-app messages as well, or I'm sorry, in-website messaging. So for instance, on the BDOW website, when we rebranded to BDOW from Sumo, we have a pop-up that shows up that's Sumo's now BDOW, so that
Yeah.
people can sort of read about the change. But then also it just notifies them about the change as well.
Yeah.
You might have a visitor show up on your website for the first time. And so you could create what's called a scroll box. And scroll box is a pop-up, but it pops up or it slides in like the bottom right or bottom left-hand corner of your website. And what you could include are a couple links in there. So it could say something like, hey, it looks like you're new around here. Consider checking out, and then maybe you have a couple links for people to check out there. And again, your website should already lead sort of people through a journey, but it's sometimes nice to have that little nudge in the website as well. You could also use scroll boxes for things like social proof. So one powerful way that you can incorporate some social proof on like a sales page would be to take some of your best testimonials and set them up as scroll boxes. And so they could scroll in, as people are reading the sales page, so it's like, Johnny bought this course and got great results, or, whatever it is. Or if you had case studies that people could go deeper on, maybe you link to those case studies.
I like that.
Something we were talking about before this, before the podcast was using it on a webinar funnel. We both have done webinars, and we have a lot of friends that do webinars as well. One of the ways that we've been using it recently is an exit intent pop-up on a webinar registration form. So basically what happens is, as people visit that page, some people will decide not to register for the webinar. Well, as they scroll up to exit that page, you can trigger an exit intent pop-up that's like a, hey, hold on, before you go, just know if you register for this webinar, you also get this free bonus. And
So
so
good.
we had friends use this for their brand photographers, and they teach about brand photography. So they were running a webinar about that, and they used this exit intent pop-up. They were able to get something like 175 extra registrations for their webinar. And as you know, in selling courses, 175 extra people registering for your webinar could equal thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars down the line, right? Just, very simple thing to set up. That kind of an exit intent pop-up, you could set up in 10 minutes on your site. And that does collect email addresses. Like the point is to get their email address so that you can register them for your webinar. But still maybe a little bit of a different way to use BDOW.
Yeah. So yeah, such like unique. I just feel like my head really is spinning as I've been working with it of like, what ways do I want to use it? And with like, I can be someone who wants to just like do all the different things at once, which I know is like not like, I think it's better to start simple with this, but it's like, which ways do I want to use it? So everyone can go look at my website and see which ways I figured out
Yeah.
using it. Cause I am like, there are so many cool applications here. And one thing I really love about it is it is so like user focused, like it's ways that are helping the experience, like that webinar thing. It's like, yeah, like reminding someone that they're going to get this thing if they sign up as they're leaving. It's just so intentional, and really following like the actual experience of the user. Like this is popping up at this point. This is coming up when they're exiting. This is only in the bottom, so it's not too distracting. Like just really, I just love it all as a web designer of how intentional it is.
Yeah. And, that's what I tell people is because I mean, one of people's questions, and rightly so, is like, well, I don't like pop-ups. They're, obtrusive, they're annoying, whatnot. But really, pop-ups shouldn't be that way. They don't have to be that way. And it's really a matter of how you set them up. And, BDOW gives you a lot of control over how you do that. I compare it to like an in-person store experience. Like if you were to walk into a shop and you're looking for something and there's somebody in there and they say nothing to you, it's like that doesn't make your experience better. If anything, you're probably thinking, okay, that person's kind of rude, like what's with that person? I mean, that person probably will say something like, hey, is there something that we can help you find? Right.
Yeah.
If you have a shop page and you have a quiz that helps people pick, or find the right product for them, that's a great pop-up to have on your shop page, because that's simply, it's the same thing as that store example. You're simply asking somebody, hey, is there something I can help you find? It's pop-ups that are hard to close, that seemingly irrelevant to, whatever it is that you do. Those are the annoying ones.
Yeah. I agree. And this, I feel like this tool helps you like make sure you're not doing that type, because you can sometimes, when you're just building pop-ups like directly in your website builder, make it where it's not clicking off easily and things like that on accident, especially on mobile. And this
Yeah.
helps you like avoid those potential problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can set pop-ups up to not appear on mobile if that's your
Oh yeah.
preference
Oh,
too,
that's, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Lots
it
of
can be
options.
hard on, yeah, that, and at least for a lot of us, like selling courses and things, people are often actually buying on their laptop anyway for a bigger purchase like that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome, Davey. Well, thank you so much. Okay, let's tell everyone where they can find you, and also I'll go ahead and share this real quick. For people listening to this live, we'll be having a giveaway over on Instagram. So go to my account as you hear this, giving away a whole year of BDOW to someone. So like such a generous giveaway there that you guys can go get. But Davey, go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you and BDOW.
Yeah, awesome. So you can learn more about BDOW over at BDOW.com, and that's BDOW.com. You can find us on any social channel that we are on at BDOW Leads, so BDOWLEADS. And then you can find me personally over at Davey T. Jonesy on Instagram, and you'll get a mix of things there, but you'll get some business. You'll also get some family stuff as well.
Love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. This was so, I think, helpful for listeners and myself. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.